Next on Currents News, parents and students of Good Shepherd Catholic Academy gathered outside of their school after the last-minute closure. And the message is clear. They want to be let back in. I'm Emily Druby, and that's coming up.
And today, Governor Cuomo announced new restrictions on churches in the coronavirus hotspots and surrounding areas. Also, a top U.S. bishop examines lockdowns from the Catholic perspective. Do they help or hurt?
Continued to do that every night and whenever I could during the day, even when I drive in the car.
And how the power of prayer is helping so many Catholics during the COVID crisis. Plus, Joe Biden says he'll make Roe v. Wade the law of the land as Republicans push to confirm Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court. The news starts right now.
Governor Cuomo said he wouldn't send his kids to the school. Well, I've got a schoolyard full of parents that would disagree with you.
Parents and students calling on Governor Andrew Cuomo to reopen Catholic schools. Good evening, I'm Christine Persichetti. Parents of Catholic school kids in the hotspot zones in Brooklyn and Queens are calling the closures unfair. The schools have taken extraordinary precautions to keep students healthy, and there have been no COVID issues. Currents News' Emily Druby has the story from Good Shepherd Catholic Academy in Marine Park.
There is no need for us to be closed right now.
Parents and students outside of Good Shepherd Catholic Academy in Marine Park demanding the state let the school reopen.
I said, I was like, this time we're not doing this without a fight.
I came out of school crying because I was so upset.
The parent-organized protest was in response to the last-minute forced closure of all schools in 9 COVID hotspot zip codes.
It just came as a shock. Seeing the kids coming out of school crying was a real heartbreaker, and that's why today, as parents, we feel like our voice needs to be heard.
Parents say the school has been safe.
We feel it's just unfair to blanket us to close.
Principal John O'Brien says they've had 0 cases of COVID since they opened on September 9th.
Why should our students have to be home today? They really shouldn't. We've been taking the precautions. They're healthy, thank God.
The school was already using a hybrid model of learning. 5 other Catholic schools have been affected by the closure: a high school, St. Edmund Prep, a middle school, Brooklyn Jesuit Prep, Our Lady of Grace Catholic Academy in Gravesend, St. Edmund Elementary School in Sheepshead Bay, and St. Athanasius in Bensonhurst.
How and why we're supposed to move forward when the rest of the community is not compliant, and how they're going to make them compliant. Our children are paying the price for it.
Superintendent of Schools Thomas Chadzuko is proud of how schools handled the last-minute closure. They were given less than 24 hours notice.
We were able to do what we really wanted to do and to teach the children this morning and then be sure they had a best they could a normal day. Because children are upset.
Parents that spoke out here at Good Shepherd say they're considering legal action. Just a few hours after the protest, the governor announcing further restrictions to attack these COVID clusters. There will now be 3 zones around them: red, orange, and yellow. All schools in the red and orange zone will be closed, while all schools in the yellow zone will be subject to mandatory testing.
Testing for schools in the yellow zone starts next week. And I am more and more concerned about schools, the more experience we have.
As of right now, the school's office tells us they are not yet sure which schools these new changes will affect. The new rules will last for at least 2 weeks. They have to be in effect no later than Friday. In Marine Park, Emily Druby, Currents News.
Schools in the Diocese of Brooklyn started preparing to open back in June, and all the academies passed inspections conducted by New York City health officials. All of the schools require students to wear masks all day throughout the school building. Desks are set up 6 feet apart. Signage promoting hygiene, illness, mask, and distance requirements cover the buildings. There are daily health screenings of everyone who enters the building in line with state guidelines. Procedures are in place if a positive case is detected or suspected. And finally, each school is cleaned on a daily basis using CDC-approved sanitizers and disinfectants. In addition to those measures, each school follows both city and state mandates on reporting, testing, and tracing. The vicar for Catholic schools says there's no need to close, but there is a need to stand up to Governor Cuomo.
And we need to keep our schools open. Get that message out. Call the governor's office, call the mayor's office, and keep our schools open. They're safe, they're clean, they're sanitized every single day. It's been wonderful to see those kids in school together.
If you feel your child's school should remain open, you can contact the governor by calling 518-474-8390. Again, that's 518-474-8390. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo is placing restrictions on houses of worship in the hotspots around the state. In a news conference, Cuomo said he would be informing churches today about the limitations and explains the reasoning behind them.
This is about mass gatherings. And one of the prime places of mass gatherings are houses of worship. I understand it's a sensitive topic, but that is the truth.
The church restrictions will be based on 3 separate areas on the map. In areas with a high number of infections marked in red, churches will be limited to 25% capacity or to just 10 people. Surrounding those areas is the warning zone marked in orange. Houses of worship there will be open at 33% capacity or to just 25 people. And in the area around the warning zone, called the precautionary zone and marked in yellow, churches are allowed to be opened at 50% capacity. President Trump's doctors say he is showing no symptoms of coronavirus following his first night out of the hospital. He returned to the White House Monday after 3 days at Walter Reed Medical Center. Today, the president vowed that the economy will not be shut down again, saying we have learned to live with the flu and will do the same with COVID-19. In a tweet, he told Americans not to be afraid of coronavirus. Don't let it dominate you. You're going to beat it. We have the best medical equipment and the best medicines, all developed recently. White House officials have reportedly declined an offer of help from the Centers for Disease Control for contact tracing. The CDC offered resources to track down the source of the coronavirus outbreak that infected the president. At least 8 others who attended the Rose Garden celebration for the nomination of Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court also tested positive. President Trump now says he wants to put stimulus talks on hold, and he wants the focus now to be on the confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett. Democrats and the White House had been negotiating a new package but have not yet reached an agreement. This as coronavirus cases are on the rise in 21 states. Mandy Gaither reports.
A day after getting out of Walter Reed Hospital, being treated for COVID-19, President Trump announced he's ending stimulus talks, tweeting, "I have instructed my representatives to stop negotiating until after the election when, immediately after I win, we will pass a major stimulus bill that focuses on hardworking Americans and small business." In response, Democrats are hitting back hard. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi saying, "Today, once again, President Trump showed his true colors, putting himself first at the expense of the country. Clearly, the White House is in complete disarray." This as the number of coronavirus cases are climbing from Vermont to Michigan, Texas to New York.
We are at a crucial moment in this city.
In New York City, schools in some neighborhoods closed less than a week after reopening, as city leaders try to get ahead of a worrisome spread of COVID-19.
We have to get ahead of this. We have to bring everything to bear we can.
Mandy Gaither, Currents News.
Former Vice President Joe Biden is already announcing his lawmaking plans should he win the November election. At an NBC town hall in Miami Monday night, the Democratic presidential nominee answered questions from voters. One woman asked Biden about President Trump's Supreme Court pick and what he would do should she overturn Roe v. Wade.
The only responsible response to that would be to pass legislation making Roe the law of the land. That's what I would do.
Just recently, Biden said that he was not opposed to Amy Coney Barrett, saying she seems like a very fine person. Biden's VP pick, Senator Kamala Harris, is also a big supporter of abortion rights. Planned Parenthood has spent 5 figures on an online ad promoting Harris as our reproductive health champion. In her 2016 run for senator in California, Harris also received contributions from pro-abortion groups and even got the endorsement of the National Abortion Rights Action League. Still, as the state's attorney general, she did allow a hospital to deny elective abortions when it partnered with a Catholic organization called St. Joseph Health System. Vice President Mike Pence, however, is staunchly pro-life. In the 2016 election, he said he hoped Roe v. Wade would end up on, quote, the ash heap of history. He repeated that view during the nomination of Justice Brett Kavanaugh. He has also attacked Joe Biden on his stance on abortion. Bishops around the nation will be praying for a unified country. The Rosary for America will be held virtually this Wednesday, October 7th at 3 p.m. Eastern. The president of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, Archbishop Jose Gomez, announced the event and invited bishops from around the nation to help lead the Rosary. After the prayers, the bishops will ask the faithful to share their prayer intentions for the country with the hashtag Rosary for America. And you can see the Rosary live on the USCCB's Facebook and YouTube page. Just search for United States Conference of Catholic Bishops on both platforms to watch the event. One woman turned to prayer to get her through the worst time in her life. The Catholic and 3 other members of her family were diagnosed with COVID-19 in April. And while struggling to fight the disease and worrying about the people she loves most, she prayed to God in a way she never had before. Jessica Easthope has more from Staten Island.
The Rosary was really important, always.
Liz Basile's faith has always been strong.
We always went to church as a family and said our prayers, and we, learned the Rosary from the time we were young.
So when the unthinkable happened, her first instinct was to pray.
That was certainly my first reaction. Or this one.
Earlier this year, coronavirus devastated Liz's family. Liz, her husband Alan, brother Michael, and mother Josephine all contracted the virus.
The virus and the power that it has is something that you just can't battle.
After lengthy stays in the hospital, her brother and husband thankfully recovered. But her mom Josephine lost her battle with coronavirus on April 11th.
She was a diabetic and she was 90. And when people say, how old? That doesn't mean that somebody is ready necessarily to pay us.
For as long as Liz can remember, Josephine's faith and family were the center of her life.
Family was the most important thing to her.
During the pandemic, Liz became attached to the Rosary and began to view it with the same devotion as her mother did.
She had rosaries all over her house. She never was afraid. She would say, I say my rosary. Why should I be afraid?
When it felt like the virus had defeated her big, tight-knit family, Liz found her strength in faith.
The Our Father, we would say every night before we went to sleep.
Liz's prayer group at her parish, St. Patrick's on Staten Island, and a bereavement group have been sources of comfort. But her family is the driving force, bringing her closer to God.
If we turn away, we don't have any hope. But if we turn toward, we will be strengthened.
So just like the way her mother lived, without fear, Liz knows exactly where to turn.
Faith and family, that was the most important thing.
On Staten Island, Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
There's a lot more news headed your way. The closing of churches during the pandemic. Was it too extreme? And what impact did it have on Catholics? Plus, how Franciscans in the Holy Land are helping Catholics stay in the place where Christianity began. And she's on the front lines helping immigrants at the border. Now she's in the pages of a popular magazine. Prolonged government shutdowns and the threat of renewed lockdowns are pushing many communities to their breaking point. The Bishop of Springfield, Illinois, Thomas John Paprocki, has been living through stay-at-home orders for months. Now he's suggesting some should be avoided in the future. He's here with us now. And Bishop, you've been looking at lockdowns from a Catholic theological standpoint. You compare it to ordinary and extraordinary measures in end-of-life care. Can you elaborate? What does that mean?
Yes, well, as I was reflecting on what we've been doing for the last 6.5, almost 7 months now, it just struck me that everything is very extraordinary. We We tell people to stay at home, don't go to work, don't go to school, even don't go to Mass, don't receive Holy Communion, and that's extraordinary. And then it occurred to me that's a word that we use in Catholic medical ethics, the difference between ordinary and extraordinary means. Ordinary means are those that are not unduly burdensome or where the benefits are reasonable for us to take. And we use those standards. Many of us have used that if we've ever had to deal with a relative, a parent maybe, or grandparent who's dying in the hospital. And you don't have to hook them up to all kinds of tubes and machines to keep them going. You provide them ordinary care. And so it occurred to me that the same thing I think applies to our society, that shutting everything down is truly extraordinary, and we don't morally have to do it. We can do things voluntarily in terms of the steps that we want to take, but otherwise we should just take ordinary means. Ordinary means like, safe distancing and hand washing and cleaning surfaces and things like that.
You wrote about all of this in the bioethics journal, Ethics and Medicine. You say in your essay that citizens should question government mandates that limit civil liberties, like attending church services. What do you say to the people who believe science trumps faith?
Well, first of all, I'd say science and faith go together. And Pope St. John Paul II had a lot of wonderful things to write about faith and reason, how they really go together. So it's not a question of one or the other. Also, I would point out that follow the science is a good maxim to take, but there's a lot of different sciences out there, so different branches of science. So if you talk to an epidemiologist, for example, they're going to tell you what you need to do to avoid contagious diseases. If you talk to child psychologists and pediatricians about what's best for children in terms of their education, they'll tell you they should be back in school. And so follow the science requires a little bit more of a distinction, which science to follow for what age group and what is your goal that you're trying to accomplish here.
All right, when you're talking about government mandated lockdowns, a lot of people would say this isn't a religious issue, separation of church and state. But why do you think this really is a Catholic issue? You mentioned that other quality of life issues are waning.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think in general, you say that our laws stem from our moral beliefs. And I think that's true even in this case. I'm not questioning the good intentions of our governors or of the other government officials. They're concerned about protecting the public safety and making sure that people are safe and not exposed to a deadly illness. And so I think what they're saying is I have to do something to save life and preserve life. But I would say, we ask that question in many different avenues. For example, if you want to do everything possible to save every life, well, over 35,000 people die in auto accidents every year since 1951. If we want to prevent anyone from dying in an auto accident, we should shut down our highways. We should never get in our cars. We don't do that. That would be extraordinary. We have to get to work. We have to get to school. Life has to go on. So what do? We take ordinary means. We use seat belts and we use airbags and we follow the rules of the road. So I'm not saying we should just throw all caution to the wind. Yes, we have to take ordinary precautions, but I think shutdowns, as we've seen, are extraordinary, and before we consider doing that again, we should think very carefully about whether or not that's really required.
All right, Bishop Thomas John Paprocki from the Diocese of Springfield, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. God bless.
For decades, there has been a steady exodus of Christians living in the Holy Land. Political and economic hardships force families to leave the land where Christianity began. But the Franciscan mission there is hoping to change that. Claudia Torres tells us how from Rome.
For decades, Christians have been leaving the Holy Land for other parts of the world, including the United States, South America, and Australia, in search of better opportunities and peace.
Because of the war, the continuous war, and the difficulties that the war gave to them, especially the economical difficulties, pushed the Christians to start leaving in order to find places where they can work, they can gain money, and they can live peacefully.
That's why the Custody of the Holy Land, part of the Franciscan mission there, has been offering Christians affordable housing and education, with a number of low-tuition schools for kids to attend. The Custody has over 500 houses in the city of Jerusalem alone, some in Bethlehem and a few in Nazareth. It's working on setting up additional houses, renting them out for no more than 25% of the city's normal rental price.
For other communities where they don't have this possibility of having these houses, a lot of people left. So we understand now that giving this possibility of having a peaceful house helped a lot the Christians to remain here.
The situation is becoming even more precarious, as Israel is the first country to go into a second full lockdown because of the coronavirus pandemic. Now the tourist industry is completely shut down, and the number of pilgrims is down to zero. This has been a crippling blow, especially for the Christian community, whose livelihood relies heavily on these sectors. All of this is added to the long-standing challenges of being a relatively tiny religious group in the region.
We are living among our brothers, Jews and Muslims. We live together, we study together, we work together, and we want to remain.
With the future of the Holy Land so uncertain, Father Ramsey is concerned that Christians will be the first to suffer because they are such a small group. That's why the custody continues to offer them as much support as it can. In Rome, Claudia Torres, Currents News.
Still to come on Currents News on newsstands today, a big honor for a nun who has dedicated her life to helping immigrants. And one state is making it an official holiday, a tribute to Mother Cabrini and her good works. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number, 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. She's been on the front lines of mercy for 3 decades. Now she's in the pages of Time magazine. Sister Norma Pimentel is being honored for the work she does helping migrants on the U.S.-Mexico border. She's on Time's list of the 100 most influential people of 2020. Sister Norma tells us it's truly an honor that her work is being recognized.
It highlights the importance of responding to human suffering and the care of others, that it's truly our responsibility as people to care for one another.
Sister Norma says she's helping immigrants not because they're immigrants, but because they're people who are suffering. Finally tonight, another Catholic woman is being honored this month. On Monday, Colorado will celebrate Mother Cabrini Day, the first paid holiday in the state named after a woman. The day is in honor of the Catholic nun, Mother Frances Cabrini, who founded schools and orphanages around the world, including in Colorado. The state will no longer recognize Columbus Day, which is still recognized nationally. And the Diocese of Brooklyn is preparing to celebrate Mother Cabrini on Columbus Day this year. The monument to the Brooklyn saint being built in Battery Park will be finished and dedicated in a ceremony with Brooklyn Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio this coming Monday. Bishop DiMarzio spearheaded the project after Mother Cabrini was snubbed in a contest by New York's First Lady, Charlene McCray. And Currents News has learned about another statue dedicated to the patroness of immigrants. The Diocese of Brooklyn is building a monument to Mother Cabrini with donations that weren't needed for the Battery Park statue. It will be erected at Sacred Hearts and St. Stephen Church in Carroll Gardens. Mother Cabrini worked at the parish, educating Italian immigrant children. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.